Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope. This time for, oh crap, I always forget to write the days down. Let me see, July 25th through July 31st. Thank you so much for being here. I really love and appreciate every single one of you guys. If you'd like to support my channel and help the creation of these videos, please give me a like, please give me a comment. It really does help me out. Thank you so much for the birthday wishes. It's very overwhelming, but I really appreciate how many of you guys actually said happy birthday to me. It's very nice. So thank you to everyone who said happy birthday. You guys will all get good luck for the rest of the year. For those that didn't say happy birthday to me, you will have bad luck for the rest of the year. I'm just kidding. You're probably fine. So now that we're in Leo season, this week, the big things that we've got going on. Oh boy, I just changed all my buttons. Hold on. That's next week. If I were the highlight button, where would I be? Hold on. Which one's the highlight button? 2? Is it Z? There we go. So this week's highlight. Sorry, I just changed all the buttons to do all this stuff. This is a pretty big week. Now, in reality, next week is the big week. Next week is huge. Next week is a lot to talk about, to be honest with you, but this is the week that sets us up for that. So let's kind of talk about it. First things first. This week we have Mercury squaring Mars. Ouch. We have the new moon in Leo. Loving that. Mercury squares Uranus again. Ouch. Jupiter stations retrograde. That's going to be pretty deep, in my opinion. Mercury then goes opposite Saturn. There's some really hardcore Mercury transits this week. And I know in the thumbnail, I really am in the title, I'm really just going to be talking about Jupiter stationing retrograde because I really think that just kind of encompasses the week completely. But as we get to the end of this week on Sunday, we actually do have the Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction. Now, technically, that doesn't happen till next week on August 1st, on that Monday. But on the 31st of this week, you will see this transit pretty much already kind of happening. So there's a lot kind of prepping us for next week. And then, of course, next week is like, here, let me actually show you what the next week thing is. So, like, next week, it's like Mars conjoins Uranus, Mars conjoins Rahu, Rahu conjoins Uranus and Mars, and Venus sextiles Mars, Mercury enters Virgo, Venus sextiles Neptune, and Mars squares Saturn. So it's really all the Mars, Uranus, Saturn, Rahu stuff. It's not looking good, to be honest with you guys. Hold on, I'm all over the place with these buttons today. There we go. So this week with the highlights, I think the main thing with this, the main story is there's a vibe shift happening. Now that we're in Leo season, things are going to be a little bit more fiery, and I know the fire signs and the air signs are really going to enjoy that. But let's just kind of go into it, and I'll be able to break it down day by day. Anyway, we start Monday off with the moon ingressing into Cancer. It really doesn't make an aspect, though. The moon will just be kind of all day long applying to Jupiter, applying to Venus. The moon actually doesn't contact Jupiter or Venus until Tuesday. So I think that's important to note. Let me show you the chart. So the big thing here is like the moon doesn't even ingress into Cancer until sometime around 10, 11 o'clock or something like that. And you know, I do like this moon in Cancer transit because now we're getting into the dark moon phase before the new moon. So I personally like dark moon phases just because it feels like, you know, when you have like people want you to be like, hey, do you want to go out? Let's go party tonight. And you're like, no, I want to like stay in and get my shit together and like plan for the week. You know, if you have Capricorn placements like me, that's what I feel like the dark moons are always like. It's kind of like a time to like not be out, not be seen, not be visible, just focus on yourself and kind of prep for the new moon, right? And as the moon goes into Cancer, there is this bigger focus on, again, necessity, taking care of, feeling good. Now, the thing is, though, the moon will be in Cancer, and it's going to hit Jupiter first before it hits Venus. So the moon in Cancer is kind of like, hey, I need to take care of things, and I need to feel good, versus Jupiter in Aries is like, why can't you do everything right now, super big and super loud and super fast? And the moon in Cancer is like, because I can't. So I think on Monday there might be this like pressure to feel as if you need to get a lot done, but I think that's going to wane simply because I think the moon conjoining Venus in Cancer is like, you know, just do what you can. Just take care of what you need to take care of. Jupiter is really slow right now. In fact, it's pretty much motionless because it stations retrograde this week. So when a planet is like getting ready to station and kind of going slow, that planet's like influence isn't necessarily as prominent. Like like when Jupiter's direct and it's moving really fast, it's like Jupiter time. It's like the Kool-Aid Man thing I was talking about with Jupiter and Aries versus Jupiter slowing down in Aries is kind of like, hey, you know, that excitement that you had 5 minutes ago isn't necessarily there anymore. So I think on Monday, the moon goes into Cancer. It's kind of, again, now with the sun in Leo, and there is this kind of sense of like, you know, your willpower, your identity, your ego is much more, I don't want to say inflamed because I think that insinuates like an issue with it, but there's a lot more fire. There's a lot more steam happening. And I think as the moon goes into Cancer, this is just much more of a focus on getting comfortable, getting, feeling good too, because it's the moon. The moon is contacting Venus and Jupiter here. So this is like the two benefic planets. It's kind of like, you know, Jupiter and Aries is like, look at all of this stuff. But the moon in Cancer is like, I can't do all of this stuff. I can only do what I can. So Monday, the moon actually doesn't contact any of these planets. But as the moon goes into Cancer, there is this focus on like, hey, what's going to make you like feel good? What's going to make you feel right in like your gut? Like it's, you know, it's so crazy. I have a delineation episode that's coming out. I believe I'm going to actually post it today. Today's actually my birthday that I'm recording this. I'm in a very party mood today. But what was I just saying? Something with Venus in Cancer. I totally forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, I'll remember what I was going to say here in a second. Monday, the moon doesn't really contact anything. It's really Tuesday where the moon actually does stuff. That's when the moon actually squares Jupiter and conjoins Venus. And that's really it on Tuesday. Now, as the moon goes and squares Jupiter, you know, the moon's in Cancer. Oh, this is what I was focusing on. I'm putting out a delineation episode, I think today, maybe tomorrow, sometime. And it's a little controversial, like they all are. And I talk about, you know, diet and mental health and shit like that. And it's amazing how in this society, we don't talk about like gut issues and how like so much of your serotonin, like most of it is produced in the gut. And they want to lie to you and say that if you don't have enough serotonin, you're depressed and it's a chemical imbalance in your brain. That's all a lie. It's actually produced in your gut. So a lot of the food that you ingest is really important. I talk about that in this episode, but I bring that up because like, you know, like the best sense of intuition is really your gut. Like when you're doing something wrong, when you're doing something that you know you're not in alignment with, you will feel that, right? And you should listen to that. Your body's trying to send you messages. I bring that up because the moon's in Cancer, and this is a time where you can connect to that probably a little easier. I think especially as Venus is in Cancer. And you know, Venus is, again, value, pleasure, sensation. And as it's in Cancer, it's like, do you feel good about this? Do you feel safe? Do you feel secure? And what are the things that are going to help you feel that way? Now, the moon is squaring Jupiter in Aries. So there is, again, this is now we're talking about Tuesday. This is before the moon hits Venus, it squares Jupiter. And there is this sense of, you know, you got to do what you got to do before you can just take on everything. And I know that's kind of vague. Let me kind of be more clear. Jupiter in Aries is really like go big or go home. Aries is about like action, orientation, you're like just straight up doing something. And Jupiter is like faith, belief, doing it in a big way. And as the moon's in Cancer squaring that Jupiter in Aries, there is this sense of like the moon in Cancer wanting to feel good and like wanting to just be in its comfort zone. And again, you know, it's good to feel comfortable, but for me, I really come from a personal development mindset when it comes to my horoscopes. And if you are into the personal development stuff, you know that your comfort zone can kill you. And the only way to grow is to get out of your comfort zone. So this moon in Cancer squaring Jupiter in Aries is really like, you know, you might need to get out of your comfort zone, but there is this sense of it's all about balance, guys. Because with the moon in Cancer squaring Jupiter in Aries, Jupiter slowing down. If you can't do it, you can't do it. You should definitely challenge yourself and try to do maybe more than you thought that you could, because you can do more than you think that you can. You are capable of so much more. I hate when I hear people, they're like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. That is just your mind telling you things, and that's from people telling you shit. Like you can do literally anything. You can change your life in 5 minutes and be a completely different person if you wanted to. It's just a matter of mindset. But as the moon squares Jupiter, it's kind of like, hey, maybe focus on the necessities. I always like to think too, it's like if Jupiter's in Aries and there is the sense of like, do this, do that, be, you know, larger than life. The moon in Cancer is like, well, in order to do that, you've got to make sure like you got to be real. Something I like to say, it's when you're on camera, when you're performing in front of people, if you're not authentic, if you're not feeling good, people can see that. And I look at this moon in Cancer as like, you know, you got to make sure you feel good in order to do that performance, in order to you know, make it larger than life. So I think as the moon squares Jupiter, there is the sense of like, hey, Jupiter, I can't do this right now. And then as the moon conjoins Venus on Tuesday, there is the sense of like, hey, what's going to make you feel comfortable? What's going to make you feel secure? What's going to make you feel safe? Venus in Cancer, very cuddly, very snuggly. I always like to think of Venus in Cancer as like, it's super nostalgic too. Like Venus in Cancer, there's something about, now that I live in Denver, something I really appreciate about Denver is you get all 4 seasons. And astrology is this magical practice where you can like get in tune with the seasons. Like I appreciate every single day so much more because of astrology, because it's like it's Cancer season. Like here in Denver, it's like it rains every afternoon and it's like humid and there's these flowers that are blooming everywhere, and it's like life is starting in a new way almost. And Venus in Cancer is kind of like the beauty of that, the beauty of like, hey, it's warm out. Historically speaking, like this was the time when humans could wander about and see other people. This is, after the winter, after the spring, this is when people traveled. So look at this Moon Venus conjunction is like, do something that's going to make you feel good. Whether that's a picnic or, maybe it sounds a little lame, but just the Moon and Venus, conjoining is like really focusing on what's going to make you feel comfortable, what's going to make you feel like, every now and then we need a hug. Like we literally need touch from other people. That's very like Moon, Venus, and Cancer. You just need to feel it out. But then we get to Wednesday, and Wednesday does change things a little bit. Simply because now we're really in the dark moon phase. And the moon, again, this isn't a lot here. It's all of the major transits happen a little bit later in the week. But the moon's going to be making a trine to Neptune, and it's going to go opposite Pluto. So if you've been watching me for quite some time, you probably have heard me talk about outer planets and how the moon connecting to outer planets, it's a little weak. Not that it's not important, but it's not just the biggest thing on my mind personally. Other astrologers do that. Other astrologers pretty much ignore the actual planets and they only use made up planets, which is a little ridiculous in my opinion. But to each their own. Astrology is a very subjective practice in a lot of ways. But the moon is going to be in Cancer, trining Neptune, and then it's going to go opposite Pluto. I like the moon trine Neptune, nostalgia, feeling good. Romanticism. You ever just like do like it's not that like things aren't as good as they appear, but like Neptune just, it's kind of like this is my own personal opinion. I know some of you will kind of disagree with this, but it's kind of like psychedelics or like drugs. People are like, oh my God, I had this amazing trip and it blew my mind. It's like, and people are like, I had this crazy spiritual experience. It's like, okay, or was it like the drugs? I mean, that's fine, but it's kind of like, you're on substances. So it's like, anyway, the moon trining Neptune, the moon, our body, our emotions, it's connecting to Neptune, this wonderful, confusing, weird planet that's in the sky, that's invisible, that we can't see. There's a lot of feel good to that. But then the moon goes opposite Pluto, and this is where it kind of gets a little fearful, right? I think as the moon's trining Neptune and everything feels really good and it might be a little bit overwhelming, it's kind of like if you've ever tripped balls before. Anyway, if you've ever tripped before, it's like moon Neptune. Wow, everything looks really cool. Everything's really great. But then fears can come up. A lot of people really can't trip balls because they lose their minds. And this moon opposite Pluto is like, you might have that fear come up. Now, I think the big difference, especially in like a psychedelic trip, is like, people will get like fearful and then they let that fear take control. And then that's when they have a bad trip. But when that happens, that's an opportunity for you to like tune in. Like here on Wednesday, the moon's going to go opposite Pluto. And when fear comes to you, are you going to let that fear take over you? Or are you going to acknowledge that it's there? And, something I like to say to people is especially if you're going to like trip acid, it's one of those things of like, hey, like this is a commitment. You're going to be tripping nuts for like 6 hours. Like you're not, if you like feel weird for a minute, acknowledge it, but don't feed into it. You can make a conscious decision of like, hey, you can feel the fear, you can listen to the fear, or you can shift your mind to something else. You can allow a different experience to happen. So I really look at Wednesdays like that moon goes opposite Pluto. And I think it'll be real like, For example, like if you've ever tripped acid before or any psychedelic, there could be moments where you're like, oh my gosh, like this is a little bit scary. And if you feed into that, it goes out of control. Or you can just like look at some trippy painting and be like, whoa, that looks cool. And totally forget about you like tripping out. So on just Wednesday, don't let that fear creep in. I also look at Neptune as like, because what you see and what you perceive may not necessarily be the real story. It's Neptune. So there's really no reason to fear, but the fear is going to come up on Wednesday. I mean, the moon's also in a dark place. It's pretty much void at this point because it's not hitting anything else besides Pluto, and who cares about that? But as the moon's opposite Pluto, just there might be some anxiousness, and it's going to just be important to like not listen to it. And that's, one of my also controversial opinions is, when it comes to the mental illness stuff, and I kind of talk about this in my delineation episode I'm talking about, and I want to make another delineation episode about mental illness. It's literally all in your head. Like, you have a lot more control over your thoughts than society wants to tell you. Like, if you have a lot of anxiety, do things that don't give you anxiety and find ways to control your mind. You are responsible for your brain. Society wants to tell you that you're not responsible. So, you can feel safe in your victim story and then just allow yourself to have zero personal responsibility. But you have responsibility over your thoughts and your actions. And it's really important to take control of that, because that actually leads to personal autonomy and personal power, empowerment. Because if you can control your mind and alleviate anxiousness and fear, you can kind of do anything. So I just say on Wednesday, try not to trip, try not to get too overwhelmed, because then we get to Thursday. Thursday is what you want. Thursday is what you want. I've been thinking about Thursday so much. This is all hitting my chart like super hardcore. So I'm on some shit on this one. Okay. Moon goes into Leo. We start the new moon in Leo, which trines Jupiter, and Jupiter stations retrograde right when Mercury squares Uranus. And then here's just a key smash of glyphs, if you can even read that. It's like moon goes into Leo, new moon in Leo, trine Jupiter, which goes retrograde, and then Mercury square Uranus. Kind of a lot, to be honest with you. Jupiter stationing retrograde is the big one, in my opinion. But let's talk about this new moon in Leo first. Moon goes into Leo, new moon in Leo. You get both of the luminaries focused on one sign in a new moon, and it's focused in Leo, the sign of the individual, the sign of the self. There's so much to talk. I could talk about Leo and the Leo Aquarius axis so much. I'm sure you guys have heard me rant about it plenty of times. But this new moon in Leo is really a good time to like settle in with yourself, have that pep talk in your head. Like for me, what makes me feel like the fucking shit and gets my ego all the way up through the roof, which again, a lot, like you don't need to be acting in your ego or reacting in your ego, but you also need a personal monologue, your self-talk needs to be like through the roof. You need to be so like over the top, like on your team. Because here's the thing, like if you're not on your own team, no one's on your fucking team. You need to be on your own team. You need to make decisions for yourself. What always helped me get through, like, I don't know, like all of my suicidal thoughts was always like I have to if I'm going to live in this life, like I've got to do what's going to make me happy no matter what. And I've got to choose me no matter what, because I'm all I have. And you are all you have. Everyone around you is going to die one day, literally. And they may not even be there tomorrow. People come and go. Family members come and go. I think family and community are important, but at the end of the day, all you have is yourself. So you need to make sure you are taken care of and that you are on your team, that you are telling, like, because if you're sitting here telling yourself, like if you play sports and your coach is like, God, you suck. God, you're just the worst. Everyone hates you. Like, you would have a shitty team and you wouldn't be able to win anything. Your coach is there to be like, hey, if you have these issues, this is what it takes to overcome them. You've got to be that voice in your head, because that's how you're going to be successful. Anyway, this new moon in Leo is a really good time to sit down with yourself. And like for me, what I was saying earlier, like what helps me get in that mindset is like listening to music, like just getting in that flow state, that channeling state, like in the law of attraction. I know a lot of people certainly don't believe in the law of attraction, or you have people maybe like, I think people maybe lean into it a little bit too hardcore. Like people will just be like, I'm attracting things. And then they do zero about it. It's like, you're not going to make you're not going to have everything in your life just fall into your lap. Like you literally have to go out and search for it. But if you are visualizing it, and the big thing with visualization is attaching the feeling to it. Like for me, I listen to like a lot of house music, any type of EDM. It makes me feel so good. Or like rap, like straight Memphis trap music. That to me is like, that gets me fucking super going. But that helps me create the feeling of success, of, greatness, of feeling good. And then the biggest thing is with visualization. If you want to create anything in your life, you can visualize it all day long, but you have to get the feeling there. What does it feel like to make a ton of money? What does it feel like to be loved by someone? What does it feel like for you to finally get that job that you want to do? What does it feel like to pay off all of your debt? Sit there and feel that. Like, what does it feel like? And don't just be like, oh, what does it feel like to not be able to pay your bills? What does it feel like to live in anxiety and fear? Don't feel that. You can acknowledge those fears, set them to the side. They're real. But when it comes to feeling things, sit down with yourself and be like, create the feeling inside of yourself of whatever it feels like to receive what it is that you want. That's how you attract shit in your life. And this new moon in Leo is the time for that. Get into your zone. What's going to make you be like, I'm the fucking shit. I'm capable of doing anything. And the reason why I say this is Jupiter goes retrograde. Jupiter isn't retrograde right here, right now. Jupiter stations retrograde a little bit more in the afternoon. But this is so big. Jupiter's been in Aries, right? And it came into Aries with that Mars conjunction. So back in like the end of May, beginning of June, it was like, we can do anything. We're doing this big, gigantic thing and no one can stop us. But now that Jupiter is slowing down and the ruler of Jupiter right now, which is Mars, is in detriment in Taurus, there is this sense of like, oh God, what did I sign up for? Like, oh, I might have bit off a little bit more than I can chew. And that's fine. Those are, that's a good feedback that you should be listening to. But as Jupiter stations retrograde, I want you to think about next year. I want you to think about 2023 because Jupiter will go into, so Jupiter's going to station retrograde. It's going to come backwards here. It's going to dip back into Pisces for about 5 minutes, which will be at the end of October and all of November and December. And then January, like it's literally like New Year's Eve, Jupiter goes back into Aries. Then from January, February, March, and April, Jupiter is going to fly through this sign again. So you get a redemption. You get to redeem yourself with Jupiter and Aries next year. This Jupiter and Aries transit was to prep you for what next year has. And you have to sit down and think, okay, all of these things that you might have started or what you did that might not have worked out that well. That's fine. Jupiter's going to go retrograde, and it's time to think if now that you kind of have a good idea of what you're getting yourself involved into, now you can kind of say, what mindset do I need to be in order to do that? Where do I have to be in order to accomplish all these things? Jupiter's about knowledge and wisdom, and it takes usually trials and tribulations to learn something. You don't ever learn something just by someone if we all have different learning styles. If you're like me, I need to like physically do it. Like if you just tell me something, I'm like, I don't listen to you. Like I have to like physically do it and learn the right way or the wrong way to do it. And so as Jupiter stations retrograde, this is a learning process, guys. This is Jupiter going direct is expanding all of this stuff, bringing you all of this stuff. And as Jupiter goes retrograde, you have to say, okay, what do I do with all of this? Jupiter is going backwards. It's a time of learning. It's a time of knowledge. If you know the who's the Thai guy? Some of my Gen Z people will know. It's like Lamborghini knowledge. That's Jupiter and Aries. That joke probably made zero sense to a lot of the older people, but the Gen Zs know that one. Anyway, Jupiter's going to station retrograde on this new moon in Leo. Clearly, with Jupiter and Aries, we were trying to do a lot, but we're not done with the Pisces stuff yet. Jupiter's going to start moving backwards. And in order to, I think, get yourself ready, well, the way I also look at it is a lot of, I know I have such a diverse following of people. It really blows my mind every time I talk to people, like especially my clients. It's like I was thinking for like the workout people. Like I know, like for me, like Jupiter going into Aries is like if you've never been to the gym before and you just start working out, you're gonna do a lot of dumb stuff. Like you're gonna do things incorrect. I still do things incorrect. Like I have poor form on a lot of things. Jupiter going retrograde is like, okay, you've done this for a little while, and now you've learned maybe what works, what doesn't work. Now it's time to like get out of your own way and learn something. I know for me, sometimes I don't look into stuff because I feel like I know better. Like I'm like, I don't need to learn that. I know what to do. And then I do it and I fuck up. I'm like, maybe I need to learn this a little bit better. That's Jupiter retrograde. But it's this new moon in Leo trining Jupiter in Aries. It's like Jupiter's also in the sign of the warrior. If you want to fight, if you want to be this Jupiter and Aries person, this new moon in Leo is a time for you to like center yourself, get that vibe right, align yourself with your mind and your emotions and that feeling in your body. And I don't look at Jupiter retrograde as going backwards, but like as a bad thing. But it's like, this is a time to learn. This is a time to like study. Like you did you went out, like Jupiter going into Aries is so like just doing it and dealing with the consequences later. Now that momentum's not going to get you as far as it was. And now it's time to really sit there and go like, learn the art of it. Like learn how to do this. Anyway, Jupiter goes retrograde. Something I also wanted to say too, what you'll see online too is like a lot of people are like, oh my God, Jupiter's retrograde. If you have taken my course, which I don't know, a lot of you still may not know this, I have a course. The link to it is in the description. It's called How to Read Your Birth Chart. It's like 7 or 8 hours. It's only like $115. But if you want to learn how to read your birth chart and you want to know all of the depths of like the planets and the signs, go ahead and purchase it. It also helps out my channel a lot. But in that video, in my course, I talk about Jupiter and Saturn being retrograde in birth charts because that's not a thing that you see a lot of people talk about. But Jupiter and Saturn are both retrograde for a third of the year. So we're going into 1/3 of what the year will look like, right? This is not just like a Mercury retrograde where it's just for a few weeks. This is for a good amount of time. We don't get Jupiter stationing direct until like November, I think. So this new moon in Leo, Jupiter stationing retrograde in Aries, like really get like in alignment with yourself. And the other reason I say that is Mercury is squaring Uranus here. So there's some bad things to it. Like Mercury and Leo can kind of blindly say things that, might be a little offensive, and it's squaring Uranus. It might pop things off and it might destabilize things. So I guess on Thursday, the biggest piece of advice on a negative sense is like, just watch what you say. If you are trying to not, stir the pot, if you're like me and just my whole presence just stirs every pot in general. And so I don't have really a choice over it. Mercury squaring Uranus is a breakthrough it's a breakthrough opportunity. Not necessarily a breakthrough moment, but it's an opportunity because Mercury's going to be in Leo, right? The way that we're thinking, the way that we're communicating, it's in Leo. It's very prideful. It's very loud and vocal. It's going to square Uranus. It's going to cause some problems. But this can also cause some solutions. And the other way I look at this too is like a lot of what I love about Uranus is that like Uranus just breaks things that didn't work to begin with, right? Like if you are trying to save something because it's the way that you've done things all the time, but it's not going to work, like Uranus will just like tear it down. So Mercury squaring Uranus, something might get torn down, something may not work, and that's because it wasn't going to work. So stop trying to save it. Find a solution. Mercury squaring Uranus is a great time it's like a breakthrough moment to find a solution. But things can kind of get out of hand on it. What was the other thing? Yeah, so new moon in Leo, trining Jupiter. Jupiter goes retrograde. Mercury squares Uranus. Like, really, it's just about, like, get yourself in fucking tune. This is, like, real. In my opinion, Jupiter in Aries was kind of, again, like, signing up for something that you really weren't knowing what you were getting into, but you were just going to do it anyway. Jupiter in Aries going retrograde is like you now know what you've gotten into, and now there's a process of learning. There's a process of this is the wax on, wax off phase. If you've watched The Karate Kid, like it's just wax the fucking car, stop asking fucking questions, and you'll figure it out why it's important later. Okay. Friday. On Friday, the moon is going to square Mars, and then it's going to conjoin Mercury, and then the moon's going to go opposite Saturn. Wait, is that right? Hold on. Let me double check that because I swear to God, that's on Friday. Yeah, okay. Because there's also a Mercury opposite Saturn day, and I thought that was on Friday. So, moon's going to square Mars, moon in Leo. Again, this is that new moon in Leo. We're feeling some type of way. We're feeling much more prideful. We're feeling much more individual, and it's going to square Mars in Taurus. Like, as the moon's, just because you want something really bad doesn't mean it's going to just like happen. Mars is in Taurus. It's going to take a while. You have to, again, this is what I do appreciate about Mars and Taurus is like, hey, like you got to do what's consistent and you got to do what you can. Like now that Jupiter's retrograde and Mars is in Taurus, it's like, it's going to be a little bit hard to get yourself out of that rut. I think a good way to look at Friday is I think you're going to realize that you might be in a rut. You're going to get out of the rut really quickly. Just trust me on that one. When Mars conjoins Uranus in the North Node, you're going to get out of the rut. It may be a little bit more extreme than you anticipated. But I think as the moon squares Mars, you might feel like that rut, that stagnation, like you want things to move forward, but they're not. That will feel a little bit frustrating. The moon is then going to conjoin Mercury, and this is like, again, it's one of those things of, with the Leo stuff, it's not about like, oh, I can do anything in the world, but it's like, you got to be like real with yourself. Like, moon conjoining Mercury and Leo is like, hey, what control do you have over this situation, and what control do you not have over this situation? Or what I can't figure out how to say that correctly in my head. Anyway, as the moon conjoins Mercury, this is kind of like a trying to solve the issue. I think this is a lot of also speaking very passionately, the moon and Mercury and Leo. It's also moon and Mercury, and then the moon's going to go opposite Saturn. The Mercury is also going to go opposite Saturn too. Let me tell you this. Get off social media. Mercury and Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius. A lot of you are going to be pushing that tweet button. Or if you're on Facebook, if all my older people that are watching this, get off Facebook. It's so toxic for you guys. Just get off of it. You don't need it. But the moon conjoining Mercury, I say this to say, these social media companies hack your brain, and then you get all worked up and mad about things that you actually really don't care about. And then all of a sudden you're left upset, and then your friends and people that you follow, or you're all mad at them for whatever fucking reason. Like, you can just save your energy, because again, your energy is very sacred, and social media companies, other people, whoever in the world wants to take your energy and they want it for themselves. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred. So when you get angry and you're like, I'm going to show them who's boss, and you send a tweet or you send a message that makes no fucking sense, all you're doing is giving your energy to someone, and then you're left drained. You're left without the energy that you need to do shit in your life. So stop. And I look at this as like, it's going to be so easy to be enabled to just like pop off on social media. And so many of you are on social media. Like, there's really no, like, especially on Instagram too, you don't need the likes. Like, find validation in other ways. I know it's addicting, but I could talk about that a lot. But anyway, moon's going to conjoin Mercury. You're going to kind of pop off, honestly. And then the moon's going to go opposite Saturn. People are going to be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Like, you're not saying the right things. You are spreading misinformation. You are blah, 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 blah. Like, just ignore it for one, but you won't have to be in that situation if you don't pop off on social media. But I think the moon going opposite Saturn too is really like, all of this Leo stuff is great, right? But when it's squaring Mars and opposite Saturn, you can sit here, and this is the problem with the spiritual community. A lot of you have this problem, is we could sit here and tell ourselves these affirmations all day long, and charge these crystals and fucking burn this Palo Santo or whatever. But it's until you actually put your money where your mouth is and you actually take action, that's the hard part. A lot of you love to be like, I'm manifesting my greatest life, but then you do nothing different to actually create that situation. I believe that you will feel pressured and you will feel that reality. You might be high on that new moon in Leo on Thursday, but when it comes to Friday and even Saturday, you might go, again, it's kind of like that conversation in your head, like, I'm going to tell them who's boss. And then you actually have that conversation and you're like, oh, everything's fine. Haha. Like, what's different this time? Are you going to do something different this time, or are you going to pussy out like you always do? What's the difference? And I look at this moon Mercury opposite Saturn as you're going to feel frustrated with the fact that it's hard. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. Like, this is hard times. Mars is on Uranus in the North Node. It's squaring Saturn. This is hard. This is not easy. So let's talk about Saturday. Saturday, the moon goes into Virgo. Mercury goes opposite Saturn. Boy, are we going to see something on Saturday. Saturday is going to be very loud. Oh, whoops, this is the wrong chart. There we go. So, number one, the moon goes into Virgo. Again, say what I've always... This is a waxing moon. This is a moon that is culminating in light. So it's building things up. What are you getting ready for? What are you prepping? What are you launching? Moon in Virgo is like getting all of your pieces together, getting everything done. Again, I always say, like, the moon in Virgo is a great time for cleaning and stuff, which it is. Like, clean things, organize things, touch things, get rid of stuff. But as this is a waxing moon, this is like the time to like go like, how can you get prepared and get your ducks in a row for whatever is coming up next for you for this full moon? So as the moon goes into Virgo, that's the time to get your shit together. Be like, all right, new moon in Leo, what do I got to do to get, again, all my ducks in a row for the things that I want? But Mercury goes opposite Saturn. I say we're going to see something because this is a popping off energy. Mercury in Leo opposite Saturn in Aquarius is going to be more of the social divide that we see, and very much like my side's right and your side's wrong. But this is very like I think you'll just see much more of the pushback against the Aquarius stuff. Like, you know, now they're requiring like fifth boosters and shit like that and other stuff. So I just feel like that's going to have some type of pushback that's much more like brought into like the media. But I think as Mercury's opposite Saturn, this is really a time of like, for example, with Saturn in Aquarius and Mercury in Leo, are you going to say what is on your heart, or are you going to cower in fear and placate to an authority figure? Mercury in Leo is like, you've got to be honest with yourself. It's you're the one who goes to sleep at night knowing whether or not you did things that were in tune with your heart or in tune with, like, you know, and again, don't always listen to your mind, listen to your heart. Like, what has to be said? And this Mercury in Leo opposite Saturn in Aquarius, I feel like you're going to be pressured. And, you know, this could be pressuring to lie and to like, again, this is Saturn, the planet of darkness. A lot of the night chart people might struggle with this. But Mercury in Leo opposite Saturn in Aquarius is like, say how you really feel. Tell them how you really feel. And also Mercury, again, like there's a lot of just like bringing reality into the picture here. Like Mercury in Leo is like, hey, Saturn in Aquarius, I can't do this. Hey, Saturn in Aquarius, I don't fit into this picture. I don't fit into this bill. And so when Mercury's opposite Saturn, you're going to feel pressured, and it's Mercury in Leo. You're on stage. All of the lights are on you, and all of the critics that everyone like that hate you are in the crowd. And what I love about Leo is that it's about performing. It's not about like making people like you. So like with Mercury and Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius, like if they don't like what you say, fuck them. Fuck them. But with Mercury and Leo, there is this sense of like, you've got to say it real. You've got to say it loud. Say it with your fucking chest. Otherwise, they're just going to be like, oh, you don't actually mean what you say. So then we get to Sunday. And on Sunday, the moon will be sextiling Venus. It's going to trine Mars in Taurus. The sun trines Jupiter. And the Mars-Uranus-Rahu conjunction technically happens on Sunday. This is something that we're going to be talking about next week. But let me grab your attention and be really serious here for a moment. I've been thinking a lot about this. This is not a fear-mongering moment, but I feel as if it is my duty as an astrologer, because my job is to tell you guys what the future might hold and to prepare you for that. The Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction is not good. We'll talk about it in your personal lives in a moment, but I want to acknowledge that the energy grid in this country is failing. Gas, natural gas, oil, all of these issues that you're seeing. There's already rolling blackouts in California. There's just my biggest piece of advice. Have some water, have some food, have a plan, have something in case something happens. Not everyone's going to be affected by this. I'm not just going to say the whole world. It could be, but I think at the very minimum, I want you to really take me seriously when I say this. Have a plan, have an idea. Don't just say, oh, nothing's going to happen. For example, if like when the Texas energy grid went down, did you have, I know a lot of people in Texas that had to go through that watched my videos. Did you have water? Did you have food? Did you have a way to heat yourself? These are things to really think about. This is not a good transit, and this could potentially be like energy related. This could potentially be a little bit more chaotic, and I think there might be, I think at the minimum, civil unrest. So again, this is not to be fearmonger. This is not to be scared. I know I have said that this is a bad transit for a long time, but I really just say, like, from the bottom of my heart, at the minimum, just have a plan, have a to-go bag, have something, and you don't need to live in fear, because there's no need to fear with any of this stuff. It's just, my biggest thing is I don't want to be like, Mars-Uranus North Node, don't do anything about it. It's like, you know, if I could say, hey, maybe go grab some extra water bottles at the next time you go to the grocery store and store them, or maybe pick up a little bit of extra food the next time. Like, I say that to say, I really hope that can help people, because maybe not all of us will be in a situation, but some of you will probably end up being in a situation. And I want to talk about that for a second. We're going to get to that actually in just one moment. There we go. So the moon's going to be in Virgo on Sunday. The moon in Virgo is really good for prepping, by the way. Like I always like the idea of prepping, even though like the preppers are always like, the world's gonna end right now and we need to build bunkers. I'm not really that into it because there's also 350 million people in this country. It's gonna be a little bit harder to just like be in a bunker for anything. But the moon's gonna be sextiling Venus, trining Mars. Moon's in Virgo, trining Mars. There's a lot of consistency to your actions. There's a lot of like just getting the energy of getting things done. It's sextiling Venus in Cancer. Get the necessities, buy the necessities, have value in necessity. That is Venus in Cancer. Like I value what I need right now, not necessarily what I want. But look, I wish I could like pinch this. I don't know. I wish I could just pinch this and zoom it in. But look right here. Oh, I'm like getting closer to my TV over here. Mars, Uranus, North Node. And it happens late Sunday night. So what are my predictions on this? One, if there was a day a nuclear bomb could go off, it's this day. If there is a day but I think it would be very accidental. But I do think something is going to happen that is very an environmental disaster at the minimum. At the minimum, an environmental disaster is going to happen. But those happen every 5 minutes, to be honest with you. What it could potentially look like, though, in a way that could affect you is an energy grid failure. A lot of people don't want to recognize this, but we are in a proxy war with the biggest nuclear power in the world. And the other second biggest power in the world also doesn't like us. The next war may not necessarily be fought with missiles, but it will be fought with energy. And let's say a country like Russia or China attacked our energy grid. And we all know from the Texas power failure that we have 3 grids, the West Coast, East Coast, and Texas. If those fail, it might be pretty big. It might be pretty big. And so, again, I would just say have something. Have a plan, have an idea. You know what I mean? And that's really all you can do. The only other thing you could do is trust God. And I know that's me being very, very woo-woo, or just trust the universe. Everything is for a reason. Everything is going to work out. It's totally fine. It's just one of those things of, I would rather you guys have something and know than just being like, because then I'm not doing my job as an astrologer if I don't talk about that. But, oh yeah, and the sun shines Jupiter. It's very like a very feel-good day. And then we get to next week. Guys, next week, Mars conjoins Uranus, Mars conjoins Rahu, Uranus, Mars squares Saturn. It is the Mars-Uranus North Node is a breakthrough moment for a lot of us. It will be very sudden, it will be very sharp, and it will not be expected. Mars-Uranus North Node is like it's an accidental breakthrough, in my opinion. It's also going to be squaring Saturn. And again, this is stuff that we're going to be really talking about next week. But the reason I'm talking about this week in the new moon in Leo trining Jupiter, you need to get your head in the game now, this week, because next week, this is the game. This is the battle. This is not easy stuff. And if you watched me since last winter I talked about it being a lot of hard transits. And when there's hard times, you do the hard things. This is the same thing. Mars is going to be squaring Saturn. Get real. It's not easy times. It's hard times. And it's the time to acknowledge that and do the hard things. Mars is in Taurus, squaring Saturn in Aquarius. It's going to be going nowhere fast. And Mars, Uranus, North Node, like that's explosive. That is literally explosive at the fucking minimum. Oh, by the way, for the people who are still watching, yes, I will say that I was at least a little bit right about Joe Biden. He slipped up and said that he had cancer, and then the White House was like, he doesn't have cancer. I don't know. I don't really believe that. I don't really believe that anything the White House says anymore. But then also he got COVID. So you got to admit, I got a little bit of something right here, okay? And I think there's going to be more to the story with Joe Biden. I do not believe he's going to finish his presidency or his term, I should say. And I think that's something that's going to be happening in November, or at least by November. So be prepared for more of that stuff. This will probably involve, like, this is not a small transit. This is not, like, the Mars-Uranus North Node thing is pretty big. It's pretty big. So anyway, next week is fucking crazy. Next week is fucking wild. So this is the week to get your head in the game. Make sure you know who you are. Make sure you're on top of stuff. And don't live in fear. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. It's like so many people can, like, it's so easy with astrology to, like, live in fear and to get, like, fearful about stuff. But the way I look at it is I've been doing this long enough to where I've seen the things that I was the most scared of actually manifest. And it was really validating. And it made me go, oh, I'm not really that scared because now I know that it's actually going to happen when it says that it happens. So the biggest thing is this is all a practice in faith. Do you have faith that even though things are going to be going awry, that you're still going to be okay, that you're still going to be taken care of, and that everything is for your highest good? This is a faith practice. This is a spiritual practice. This is why I say astrology is a religion and we need religious protection, because it's a faith thing. And I think it's really important to make sure like you have the faith that things are going to be okay. But I also look at this Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction as like sometimes in order, like, Uranus, I've talked about this before. Richard Tarnas, Prometheus the Awakener, he talks about Uranus in the mythology. Sometimes you have to break out of prison. Mars-Uranus North Node is a prison break, and there are consequences for that. The guards could shoot you, the dogs can eat you, you can drown, you can die. But what's more important, your fear or your freedom? I look at this Mars-Uranus North Node thing as there's going to be a moment next week where you are going to have to break through to the other side, and it's going to be hard, and it is going to be challenging. And you have Saturn and Aquarius challenge it, and it's going to feel like you're going nowhere fast. Like Mars squaring Uranus in the North Node is like breaking out of prison because someone left the door open, and now all of a sudden you're outside of prison, and you had no time to think about it, and you're just going to have to go. So I look at next week as it's really big. So I guess to just talk about my final thoughts. Get real with yourselves. But this new moon in Leo trining Jupiter, and Jupiter going retrograde, like Jupiter in Aries is like once you do it, you'll believe it. Versus now with Jupiter retrograde, you got to believe it before you can do it. How do you believe it? You make it real in your heart. What does it feel like to do the things that you want to do, to have the things that you want, to whatever it is that you're trying to align yourself with? Create that feeling inside and make it real on the inside, and then take the actions necessary to create it in reality. You will be having setbacks. You will be having challenges. Just because you feel it and you do work doesn't mean it's just going to work for you instantaneously. But the more that you create that feeling and the more actions that you take, it's a compound effect. It just like, I know a lot of people that want to be astrologers, and they look at me and they're like, oh my God, like I want to be like you and do all this. This took me years. It took me years of failing and not having views and all the problems I wish I could sit here and say, but this is just a compound effect of me just doing it anyway. So I look at this and believing that I could do it, number one, but then doing it, and after setback, I still went for it, and I'm still going for it, even with all the setbacks that I still have. So it's just about like being assertive that you want something and that you're going to do it, and just keep doing it. Don't listen to obstacles. Like what people might feel like is something that is stopping them is really just an obstacle to go around. And it's the universe saying, hey, do you really want it? Or is this problem so bad enough that it'll stop you from what you want? Because if it is, then you'll stop getting what you want. Versus if you don't listen to that and you see it as an obstacle to get around, then the universe will reward you for those actions. So I really think of this week as a time to be very brave. I think it's a time to be very courageous. I think it's a time to be very real and honest with yourself. Because you're all you have at the end of the day. So I don't have much more to say besides that. I don't have much more to say. I think that's it. Anyway, I will leave you guys off with that. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Please give me a like if you like this video. Please comment your thoughts. I want to hear them as well. It helps me out with the algorithm. And oh yeah, join us on Patreon. On my Patreon, again, I have exclusive content. I'm not doing Ask Me Anything episodes, ad-free content. You get access to my private group chat on Telegram. What's the other stuff? Oh, rising sign horoscopes, live monthly horoscopes. I got all types of stuff on my Patreon. So go ahead and check that out there. And I guess with that being said, I will be seeing you guys next week.